I am Alpo Martinez. For most of my life, I lived in the fast lane, dealing drugs, making enemies, and always looking over my shoulder. But nothing could have prepared me for my final hours. It was a cold October night in 2021, and the shadows seemed to come alive, whispering threats and promises of doom. As the night crept in, a sense of dread settled over me. I felt it in my bones, cold, gnawing fear that I couldn't shake. I tried to brush it off, but the feeling grew stronger with every passing minute. The streets I once ruled felt different, darker, more menacing. It was as if the city itself had turned against me. I was in Harlem, the place where it all began for me. But this time, it didn't feel like home. I felt like a stranger, an intruder in my own territory. The once familiar faces now seemed hostile, their eyes filled with suspicion and hatred. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. I knew I had enemies, more than I could count. People I had crossed, betrayed, or hurt in my climb to the top. And now, it seemed, they were all closing in. My mind raced with thoughts of revenge, betrayal, and the countless lives I had ruined. The fear was paralyzing, wrapping around me like a vice. As I drove through the city, every streetlight seemed to flicker ominously, casting long, eerie shadows that danced across the pavement. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the silence of the night. I glanced in the rearview mirror constantly, half expecting to see the faces of my enemies staring back at me. The streets were eerily empty, and every corner I turned felt like a step closer to my doom. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking my every move. The paranoia was suffocating, a constant reminder that my past was finally catching up to me. Suddenly, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was more than just a cold night air, it was a premonition, a sense of impending doom. I knew something terrible was about to happen, but I couldn't escape it. I was trapped, prisoner of my own fate. As I drove down Frederick Douglass Boulevard, I saw a car following me. My pulse quickened, and my hands tightened on the steering wheel. I tried to shake them, turning down side streets and alleyways, but they stayed with me, relentless and unyielding. Panic set in, and I could feel the cold sweat dripping down my back. In a desperate attempt to lose them, I sped up, the engine roaring as I pushed it to its limits. But they were always there, a constant shadow, a reminder that my time was running out. I could feel the fear clawing at my throat, making it hard to breathe. Then, it happened. The flash of headlights behind me, the screech of tires, and the deafening roar of gunfire. Bullets shattered the night, tearing through metal and glass, and I felt a searing pain in my chest. The world spun, and everything went dark. In those final moments, as I lay there bleeding, the weight of my actions crashed down on me. The faces of those I had wronged flashed before my eyes, a parade of ghosts come to claim their due. The fear was overwhelming, a suffocating presence that crushed me under its weight. I thought of my family, my friends, the people I had betrayed. I thought of all the chances I had to change, to walk away from the life of crime, but never took. Regret gnawed at me, a bitter pill that I couldn't swallow. The pain was excruciating, but it was the fear that truly consumed me. The fear of the unknown, of what awaited me on the other side. The darkness seemed to close in, wrapping around me like a shroud, and I felt myself slipping away. In those final moments, the realization hit me with brutal clarity. This was it. There were no more second chances, no more escapes. My life, filled with violence and betrayal, had led me to this point, and there was no turning back. As the darkness swallowed me, I could hear the faint sound of sirens in the distance. Help was coming, but it was too late. The fear was all-encompassing, a final, cruel reminder of the life I had led. And then, there was nothing. Only silence and the cold, unyielding embrace of death. I am Alpo Martinez, and these were my final hours. The haunting realization of a life lived in shadows, the terror of impending doom, and the cold, relentless grip of fear. I am Alpo Martinez, born Alberto Geddes Martinez on June 8, 1966, in East Harlem, New York City. I grew up in a world that was rough, chaotic, and unforgiving. My early life was marked by the struggle to survive in a neighborhood where violence, poverty, and crime were part of everyday life. flashy cars, the expensive clothes, the respect and fear that the hustlers commanded, it all seemed like a ticket out of the life of hardship. I saw older kids in the neighborhood who seemed to have it all, and I wanted a piece of that. My mother tried to keep me on the straight and narrow, but the pull of the streets was too strong. I started small, running errands for local dealers, learning the ropes, and gaining their trust. It wasn't long before I graduated to dealing drugs myself. By the time I was in my early teens, I was already making a name for myself in the drug game. I was smart, ambitious, and ruthless, a combination that quickly set me apart from the rest. My rise to fame really began in the mid-1980s when I teamed up with AZ Faison, a major drug dealer in Harlem. AZ was a mentor to me, teaching me the ins and outs of the business. Together with Rich Porter, we formed a powerful trio that controlled the drug trade in Harlem. We were young, rich, and on top of the world. The money flowed in, and with it came power, respect, and a sense of invincibility. We were making millions, and our operation was running smoothly. But in the drug game, nothing stays smooth for long. Jealousy, greed, and betrayal are constants, and it wasn't long before cracks began to appear. My relationship with Rich Porter, in particular, became strained. Trust is a rare commodity in our world, and once it's broken, there's no going back. The turning point came in 1990 when Rich's younger brother, Donnell, was kidnapped. The ransom was set at a staggering $500,000, and it threw our operation into chaos. Rich was desperate to get his brother back, and tensions ran high. It was during this time that I made a decision that would change everything. I ordered the hit on Rich Porter. Rich's murder shocked Harlem and sent ripples through the drug community. It was a move that solidified my position at the top, but also painted a target on my back. People knew I was ruthless, willing to do whatever it took to stay on top. But with power came enemies, and I had plenty of them. In the early 1990s, I decided to expand my empire and moved to Washington, D.C. The drug scene there was ripe for the taking, and I quickly established myself as a major player. The money was good, but the violence was relentless. Shootouts, drive-bys, and brutal turf wars became part of my daily life. I thrived in the chaos, but it was a dangerous game, and I knew my time could be cut short at any moment. The DEA and local law enforcement were always on my tail, but I managed to stay one step ahead. My operations were slick, my network vast, and my paranoia constant. I trusted no one, always looking over my shoulder, always expecting the worst. It was a life of luxury and fear, a high-stakes game where one wrong move could mean death or prison. In 1991, my luck finally ran out. I was arrested in Washington, D.C., on federal drug charges. Facing life in prison, I made a decision that would shock everyone. I decided to cooperate with the authorities. I gave up information on my former associates, including some of the most powerful figures in the drug trade. It was a betrayal that earned me a place in the witness protection program, but also a reputation as a snitch. Cooperating with the feds was a double-edged sword. It spared me from a life sentence, but it also made me a marked man. In the world I came from, there was no greater sin than betrayal. I was relocated, given a new identity, and left to live out my days in obscurity. But the past has a way of catching up with you, and I always knew that one day it would come knocking. The years in witness protection were a strange kind of prison. I was free, but I was also constantly looking over my shoulder, living in fear of retribution. My fame, my power, my life in the fast lane, it was all gone, replaced by a quiet existence filled with paranoia and regret. I missed the rush, the money, the respect, but most of all, I missed the feeling of being untouchable. Eventually, I left the witness protection program and returned to Harlem. It was a reckless move, driven by a desire to reclaim some part of my old life. But Harlem had changed, and so had I. The streets that once felt like home now felt alien and hostile. The people who once feared and respected me now saw me as a traitor. I was a ghost, haunted by my past, living in the shadow of the man I once was. My early life and rise to fame were marked by ambition, ruthlessness, and a relentless pursuit of power. But the higher I climbed, the more dangerous the game became. The betrayals, the violence, the constant fear, it all took a toll. And in the end, was that same ruthless ambition that led to my downfall. I am Alpo Martinez, and this is my story. A tale of rise and fall, of power and betrayal, of a life lived in the shadows and a legacy marked by fear.